Yes? Okay, now it's working. So good morning, everyone. My name is Pawel Sawicki. I work at the Auschwitz Memorial. I'm a press officer, educator, our social media person. And well, I was a bit surprised when the Web Marketing Festival invited the memorial to participate, although we are so far away from everything that you have in the program that I'm really surprised to see so many people that decided to hear about something else than very interesting conversation about web marketing. But after hearing Roberto Saviano in the first day, and when he talked about neutrality and complicity and responsibility, I think there will be some things here that will be very similar to what he opened the presentation with. I don't know if any one of you saw the photograph here. This is Wisconsin in the United States, high school students in a city called Baraboo, and during some kind of event they took a picture like this. And you can see they show the Nazi salute. And of course, when it all became hot, when this picture entered the social media, they explained that the photographer simply asked them to wave to the camera, but if you look at what they're doing, they're not waving at the camera. And then the world started talking about this. The Auschwitz Memorial also reacted about this, and this is the starting point of the presentation, because those young people go through some kind of educational process. I mean, we all educate ourselves in school system. Today we educate ourselves also in the world of internet. The social media is used to put something in people's heads, and we can of course have another presentation. What do those young people think when such a salute is made? But such a picture allows us also to take a look at an older picture of different school system. I don't know if you've ever seen this photograph, and I don't know if you recognize this gentleman here. This is Adolf Hitler in his school. So he also went through some kind of educational system process, and he learned something. And then the same man, but just a few years later, took another group photographs like this. And you can see that he's already teaching another generation something else. And this is the hateful ideology of the Nazi party, anti-Semitism, racism. And then the same young people who you see in this photograph later became adults in this society. And of course, you can see someone who refuses to participate, but you can see this mass populism entering into Nazi Germany, and there are people following, and then the same people, few years later, are standing here on the platform of Birkenau, deciding about life or death of those people. You can see selection platform in Birkenau, Hungarian Jews that arrived at probably end of May 1944, and here you can see again those people who went through some kind of educational system in this totalitarian state, and they are ready to divide people and then decide about their murder. But as you can see, this gentleman is still needs to finish smoking his cigarette before this job is done. So, and this is the site today, the same place, 70 few years later, and our mission to teach about history. But it seems that in this complicated world, just teaching about history is not enough. And you saw during the Roberto Saviano speech many historical photographs, including the Warsaw Ghetto photograph. He might have also added some photographs from Auschwitz. But before I'll address a little bit more about these universal topics, I think we need to understand why Auschwitz becomes this symbol. Why today, when people refer to things that happened during the Second World War, during the Holocaust, they very often use the name Auschwitz only. Auschwitz is, of course, the symbol for the Jewish people, and this is the symbol of the Holocaust. 1/6 of all Holocaust victims were murdered in this single camp. But of course, the story of Auschwitz is much more complicated than just this. And we could go to a photograph like this in June of 1940. This is the first transport to Auschwitz. Polish people, 728 men. They became the first prisoners because Auschwitz starts as the concentration camp against Polish intellectuals, resistance, administration. The Germans attempt to destroy the nation first. And then, of course, it developed. But Poles and the Jews are not the only groups of victims of Auschwitz. Here you can see the Soviet prisoners of war, another tragic part of the story of the war, and Auschwitz, and the Gypsies or the Sinti and Roma. That's the 4 main groups of victims that we have in Auschwitz. And of course, when we look at this world, we look at the black and white photographs. And sometimes it seems that the story is so distant because it's in black and white. The man here is Witold Pilecki, one of the creators of the resistance movement in Auschwitz, who later escaped and wrote a report. And the girl below him, Czesława Kwoka, a 14 years old Polish girl deported to Auschwitz in December of 1942, We know just a little bit of her story. You can see that the lip is cut. When she was walking towards the photographer's studio, one of the female guards, because she didn't understand German, hit her in the face and she was covered in blood. The photographers were asked to clean her face, and this is where they could talk to her. So when you look at this picture, you can see that she was hurt and she was crying just a moment ago. The only thing we know about her in the camp is that she was murdered 3 months later with a poisonous heart injections of fentanyl. So she was murdered in Auschwitz in March of 1943. But you can also look at those pictures this way. This is not just the past. This is not a black and white world that we can distance ourselves from. Thanks to our cooperation with a Brazilian artist, Marina Amaral, we have those pictures in color. And despite there are many challenges of the colorizing black and white pictures, it has the very powerful effect on the viewer, that it brings the history from the historical world, and we start looking at these people as they're people like we know today. And maybe one more historical picture that explains the symbols and why it's so important to look at the story of Auschwitz through those human lenses. You can see those people waiting to be murdered in a forest near gas chamber number 4 in Birkenau. They have no idea what's about to happen in probably an hour or less. And you can see those 2 children. One of them found a flower and shows this flower to another children. This is how children learn the world. I mean, I'm a father of 2, my younger son is 1, so this is what he does. He just discovers the world. He has no idea what is happening here, and this is exactly the same place today. So we are talking about a very painful human story when we talk about Auschwitz, symbolic story. And this is the symbol that is recognized all around the world. Just a few photographs of some religious visit to the Auschwitz Memorial, including the Pope, including many religious figures. Auschwitz became a symbolic place, sometimes representing all the atrocities of the Second World War, the symbol of the Holocaust. And here you can see the March of the Living. This is, of course, a very important place for the Jewish diaspora. Once a year during the Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, they also visit the site, but this is our ongoing activity. And few more visits, again, Pope Francis, but also the leaders of the world. This is the Hague Court. So there are people who come to Auschwitz to see the site, to learn, but we hope that we can also give them some important universal message for today and for the future. But it would all not be possible if not the decision taken in 1945, 1946 by the survivors of Auschwitz, who participated in the debate what to do with the site of the camp, because there were also voices that the site should be destroyed, ploughed, completely erased, and they wanted to create some kind of institution of memory. And thanks to them, in June of 1947, July 1947, the Auschwitz Memorial was created. So you can see some, again, black and white pictures of our old exhibition, all entrance and the opening event. And when we talk about the elements of our mission, because of course Auschwitz Memorial needs to find some kind of philosophy and goals and mission, the key aspect, of course, is conservation and preservation of the site. Without the site, without the artifacts, without the documents, without the photographs that we preserve, we wouldn't be able to do anything, because people come to Auschwitz to have this experience of authenticity. So of course, artworks, metal objects, buildings, and how this conservation help us. This is one example. This is a suitcase from our collections. And our conservators in this suitcase, during the conservation work that they were doing, they found just a piece of paper that was put into some kind of a hole. I mean, the owner of the suitcase just plugged it with something that we can call a trash. I mean, we just remove this and we can throw it into the bill. After the conservators of our labs took this little piece of paper out, we noticed that this is a piece of a newspaper from, and here you can see the date, this is May of 1937, a Morning Moment. This was a Jewish newspaper in Polish from the city of Lvov. So we had just a little bit of the story. We will never know who brought this suitcase to Auschwitz, but we just have this tiny little human element of the story that needs also to be preserved. And today the suitcase is together with this piece of paper in the collections department. Another example of this humanity in the object. A few years ago, during the conservation or the checking of our room with over 13,000 metal objects, the kitchenware items, our conservators discovered a mug which had a false bottom. And under this false bottom, you have the ring that you can see right next to it. And there was also a necklace there. And again, we'll never know the identity of the person because there are not enough marks. There was some Polish letters. It was cut out of the cocoa tin cup. So there were letters in Polish, so probably it was a Polish Jewish person, but we'll never know the identity. But this means that this person, when he or she was deported to Auschwitz, decided that something may be important for the future. That the resettlement, the hope that the Germans give those people worked, because if this person knew what the journey means, this would be pointless because there would be no future. And just one more example of tiny detail. There is a set of buildings next to the memorial today, the vocational school, and during the camp, the Germans built there also a bomb shelter for some of the SS guards. And when the school was renovating the building and they were destroying the shelter, they found a bottle and a message in the bottle. They broke the glass and they discovered this piece of paper with the names of 7 prisoners who were building this bomb shelter. So again, something like this doesn't change the story of Auschwitz tremendously. We just happen to know 7 prisoners who were here, but it's just this human trace in this very important story. And thanks to the work of the media, we managed to learn that 2 of the people from the list are still alive. And one of them came to the memorial when the school gave us the original, and we made a copy and gave it to the school where it is presented. So these are some kind of important discoveries. We still find things. This is the photograph of the conservation project of one of the brick barracks in Birkenau. And during this conservation, during the archaeological conservation, we found over 5,000 objects. Sometimes, you know, this is, you can see before the conservation, but we will be able to conserve them. Sorry, can I take photos? Yes, you can take pictures at any time, of course. And so this is the one part of the story. The conservation is our mission. Another is of course, working with the visitors who come. Auschwitz Memorial is the most visited museum in Poland, 2.1 million visitors, and 85% of them are guided by our educators. This is something very important because they can participate in an educational program. The shortest visit is 3.5 hours. Anyone of you have ever visited Auschwitz Memorial? Few people with a guide? Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. We guide right now in 23 languages. So this is something very important for us because those people not only see the site, but also learn the story of Auschwitz thanks to our guides. And here you can see the numbers. One important thing is this increase that you can see from 2001 to 2018. In the last 17, 18 years, the numbers of people visiting Auschwitz Memorial is 4 times bigger. And of course, we could discuss again, what are the reasons? Partially, of course, Auschwitz becoming a symbol. We can see educational projects in different countries in school system, but there's also much more pragmatic issues like European Union and the possibility of traveling and cheap airlines and things like that. I remember 2 years ago, we started seeing so many people, Spanish-speaking people, suddenly started coming. I mean, there are a lot of them are coming, and you can see Italy here on the 4th place last year. But there were and we started thinking, why suddenly we have so many Spanish groups? We had a shortage of Spanish language guides. And Ryanair opened a new airline. So they started flying from Madrid to Krakow and visiting Auschwitz. Another part is, of course, education programs we have for teachers and educators, for policemen, for the army, for different groups of people who should have this experience of the lesson of Auschwitz in their ethical system in their work. We have, for example, a unique project which we made with the prison system. So we teach prison educators and guards, but we also have special presentations for the inmates of today's prisons, which is a very difficult and challenging program because, well, if I have a 16-year-old girl, a student from, let's say, Rome, for this example, or Rimini coming to the memorial, it's somehow very easy to tell this young girl, you know, you shouldn't be evil in your life, you should do good, and it seems to be a very easy thing. But talking about the story of Auschwitz to the people who actually made something wrong in their lives, I mean, they are not in the prison system for nothing. It's much more challenging, so we also have projects like this. And of course, we do with our education through exhibitions, and this is our old exhibition. Who visited the memorial still may remember some of these rooms. One of the biggest projects that we have today is to renew the exhibition at the memorial. So in a few years, there will be a completely new permanent exhibition that we have. But you know, knowing that 2 million people visit the memorial every year, it also it also tells us that there are like 6-7 billion people who not visit the memorial every year. So we also need to have something for them. And here is the photograph of the biggest traveling exhibition about Auschwitz ever created. We created this exhibition with a Spanish company called Musealia. It was in Madrid for over a year. Now it's in New York. So if you happen to be in New York in the next few months, you can go to Jewish Heritage Museum, Lower Manhattan Battery Park, and see this exhibition there. Some projection slides of the new exhibition at the Auschwitz Memorial. One topic that we also will address, something that is not addressed today, is the world of the perpetrators. Because if we try to ask a question why it happened, we're not asking about the victims. We are asking about people who you can see in those pictures. So this will be additional phase. And another slide here, you can see a little bit of the artifacts that will be presented also. But not only the mass, but also here you can see many individual items, because we need to tell this story through individual stories of people who went through this world. And Auschwitz as a symbol is, of course, a symbol for the world, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. 27th of January, the liberation date of Auschwitz, is in many countries the Holocaust Remembrance Day. So we have those events, commemoration, reference point for the world. And there is the world of media that we work with. That's part of my job as well, to work with journalists who come to Auschwitz Memorial on an everyday basis, writing, preparing stories. And now something about our work in social media, because we somehow became pioneers from the world of the memorials in 2009 when we started being on Facebook, which was a very new thing. I like to concentrate mainly on Twitter, which is right now the biggest social media platform for us. And I will start from a story. So this is June of 2017, so 2 years ago. I was at home and I saw a friend of mine who is a PhD student in England and who runs a blog, A Week in Auschwitz, posted something like that, addressing Amazing UK, that something that they sell is problematic. So I took a look, and this was this Holocaust wound that they were selling. And I decided to give her a hand, because Amazing UK will probably not listen to a blogger and a PhD student from England, but maybe when Auschwitz Memorial and our verified account will say something, it may have more impact. So this is what we wrote: is selling a Holocaust wound really appropriate? And 40 minutes later, the product was gone from the Amazing UK. I hope we could change the world the same way in many other aspects, but we managed to fix the world a little bit like that. But of course, because media is also watching us online, we started having articles about this. So the Auschwitz Memorial reacted, and there was a Holocaust wound and so on. So just to follow up, horrorshop.com was the seller in Amazing UK. It was a German store, and they said that they were using automatic translation for the German descriptions of their articles, so the burning wound was translated automatically by Google as a Holocaust wound, and that was the source of the problem. So Newsweek wrote about it, and many articles wrote about it. And this shows how that the memorial has also some obligations, because we can use social media to be present in the interaction with the world. And something that the turning from PowerPoint to PDF failed are the numbers. So these are three main platforms that we are at: Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We have over 334,000 followers on Twitter. We have almost 300,000 followers on Facebook and 60,000 on Instagram. And our policy, and this is why Web Marketing Festival is something that doesn't really help us too much. We do not pay for anything in terms of marketing. This is generic traffic that we try with the help of the audiences to build. And of course, Twitter, as I said, is the most important element of our work right now in social media. And of course, a part of it is commemoration and education and reminding about dates and facts and things. But what we do in the world of social media is, for example, fact-checking. There are journalists writing about Auschwitz, and they unfortunately make mistakes because this is a very complicated world. So when we have an article, we sometimes send fact-checking to the journalists, because our policy is that if we want to share a material, I mean to retweet or to just post it in our social media, it must be historically accurate. I mean, we cannot promote a material that will have historical mistakes, so we send fact-checking. As you can see, it sometimes can be very thorough, very detailed. You can say that we're picky and we're problematic, but this is a part of our work. The historical accuracy is something important. again, another example of this, that you can see how many different elements we can find when sometimes people write a story. And this is, on one hand, something that we may say it's against the journalists. They come here and they want to write the story. But there again comes some responsibility when you are a journalist trying to tackle the important and complicated story of Auschwitz. Some other issue we have is, for example, the question of the Polish concentration camps. The concentration camps were not Polish, they were German Nazi camps, so we also address sometimes media, and in most cases this works. So it's very quick response from the media outlets. Something that we just recently discovered are fake news spread around the topic of Auschwitz. So here is, for example, a photograph that is very often distributed in the American alt-right world. They show this picture saying that this is George Soros. And this is not George Soros because this is the Oscar Granning photograph. And so we also decided that because it's spread on social media, and sometimes they are, big accounts spread this lie, we also start to address this issue, something that we didn't have 10 years ago or 20 years ago, fake news, historical fake news in a certain way. We also use our account to publish statement. A few years ago, we could have journalists calling us for a number of hours. Today, it's easy. Go to our Twitter, our statement is there, and you can quote this. And of course, we sometimes react when some strange thing happens. For example, here, an American Congressman, Clay Higgins, inside a gas chamber, recorded a video selfie. And we decided to react, not about what he was saying, because then we would enter into the political debate, which we do not want to do, but we just addressed that maybe this is not the place for doing something like this. And 3 days later, he apologized for what he had done. That's another question is, should we react all the time? Should we respond to every Twitter follower or every Twitter user where we found something? Of course not. But especially when you have public figures, journalists, politicians, people who create this debate and opinion, Auschwitz Memorial then sometimes responds. Something that was very interesting, of course, sometimes when we have this training and we say, oh, maybe someone should contact Facebook or Google or Twitter. I mean, if you ever try to contact them, it's not so easy usually. I mean, to write to their line. So we had a problem because Google, at some point, when you wrote the name of the first Polish prisoners of Auschwitz, the Google result gave you the picture of the SS man. It's just because of the algorithm. And we found it a problem, so we decided to do it openly on Twitter, and a person from Google replied, and they removed the picture, and today the picture is correct. So we can also, thanks to this publicity and the fact that we are the symbol and we have the verified account, also, Google can react. And what is interesting, Facebook follows us on Twitter. Google doesn't follow us on Twitter. Twitter doesn't follow us on Twitter, but Facebook does. And this is the picture that I showed you at the very beginning, the Baraboo High School, and this was our reaction, and it's hard to find words. This is why every single day we work hard to educate. And education is the key for us. Sometimes we discuss with writers, and here you can see us writing in Spanish. I mean, me writing in Spanish because I run our social media. Arturo Pérez Reverte, we had some discussion with him, or this is the Polish context, and American context. So we are present in such debates, or sometimes this kind of exchange of historical details is very thorough. As you can see, this is the historical debate between the head of our research center and one of the rabbis about some very detailed aspects of the story of Auschwitz. So we also have debates like that. But the key, and still it will be the key activity for us in social media, is to educate, is to spread this historical information about the story of Auschwitz to the world, which is very important. Another aspect of our social media work is Instagram. And Instagram is different because on one hand, on Instagram, we can show good examples. We find pictures that people take and we can show them on our Instagram feed and add some historical information to make it educational and to show important, interesting photographs that people take. But also, Instagram allows us to see what people photograph at the Auschwitz Memorial. What do they hashtag Auschwitz? And there are over 350,000 photographs hashtagged Auschwitz. So it's a big database for us to see what becomes a symbol for people. And sometimes we also react because people take stupid pictures. And this is something that again triggered a debate. Because of course, we could talk about selfies, and selfies is more complicated. But for us, something like this, when people walk along this rail line where 500,000 people were deported, this is disrespectful, clearly. And so we decided to react in March. And again, it started the whole debate. Thanks to make it public on Twitter, you can see 46,000 retweets is a lot in the world anyway. So this is something that we deal with when we talk about our strategy thing. And maybe one more thing, I'm just looking at the watch. How much time do I still have? I have 10 minutes. So when we talk about the world of Auschwitz, and when people come to see the Auschwitz Memorial, first of all, they look at the victims. And this is a very natural process. Human mind works like this. Our empathy, our feelings are dedicated to the world of the victims. We, in a certain way even, we put ourselves in the world of victims when we talk about, when we come to Auschwitz. This is the group we want to associate ourselves with, very humanly, empathically. And of course this is very important, but as I said, the question why it all happened, why this human tragedy took place, is not a question about the victims. It's a question about those people. And here you can see the perpetrators. You can see the SS men in summer of 1944, 30 kilometers outside of Auschwitz, of the Auschwitz camp, in their own resort, Zollahütte. And you can see them having fun, accordion. And here you can see the first commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Hess, and the third commandant of Auschwitz, Richard Baer, and Dr. Josef Mengele, and several other senior officers who are having a great time at the same time where those people are waiting to be killed in gas chambers in a certain way. So this is also our challenge, because when we say that Auschwitz is a human story, it's a human story when we talk about the victims, it's a human story when we talk about the perpetrators, because perpetrators were fathers and husbands and sons, and they had dogs, just like us. And at some point they went through this kind of a different educational system. They accepted this ideology and they were ready to put those uniforms on and work in a place like this. This gentleman, Richard Baer, if not the war and the Nazism, he from education was a confectionery maker. So maybe in another parallel world he would be selling candies to some other kids, but at some point he simply decided that he will get engaged in something completely different. Or a photograph like this, the first commandant of Auschwitz and his wife, Hedwig, and his 5 children. And so they are people, and this is the challenge when we talk about this world, because this is the most frightening lesson coming for us from this place, that people can hate others so much that they can create world like Auschwitz for others. And this is why, for example, when we have projects for the army, and I do apologize, I put myself in the presentation, this is also something very challenging, because they wear uniforms and there is some set of ethical values they attach with the uniform, and we show them other people in uniform and tell them, be careful. And of course, we see pictures like this today, and these are photographs taken over 70 years ago, aerial photographs, and this is black and white world. But today we can also see photographs like this. This is a Bosnian-Herzegovina war. So this is the genocide in Srebrenica. We can see concentration camps in different totalitarian regimes from the air today. As we speak, there are many horrible things happening. Or today technology allows us to see mass graves before they become mass graves. We can see empty halls thanks to satellite photographs before some perpetrators will murder people in them. And this is the challenge of responsibility that we have. Because those people who come to the memorial, as I said, they want to associate themselves with the victims. They will not associate themselves with the perpetrators, of course, but in most cases, none of us, as we sit in this room or as we visit the memorial, none of us will become a perpetrator or victim of something. We're all, people want to be Anne Frank, but we're all this girl here who is looking at something happening very close to us. We are by far bystanders, and with bystanding comes responsibility, Because as, again, Roberto Saviano said 2 days ago, we sometimes try to stay neutral. We want to get disattached from the events we see around us. And there is a more and more urgent question if it's the right choice to stay outside, not to speak up, not to participate. And within the world of Auschwitz, we have so-called people of goodwill, over 1,500 people who lived near Auschwitz, and who risked their lives to smuggle food, smuggle messages, help in escapes, do different things. So these are bystanders who found motivation in their life to do something for others. And I think this is one of the key messages that we can get from this history and tackle this challenge of our responsibility as bystanders today. What should we do? Should we speak up? Should we do something? How can we react? And I go back to this photograph, and this is almost the end of the presentation. This is once again, the Baraboo High School students. And what was for us, of course, this is a very difficult moment for us as educators to see 16, 17-year-old boys performing a Nazi salute. But after this picture went online, after this picture went viral, a few days later, at the same stairs in the same city of Baraboo, other people came and started taking another pictures. And it was for us very encouraging that we saw that for some people they will do something to show that their message is different, that they disagree, that they want to speak up. And I think this is something we need to have in the back of our heads when we look at this historical world, because this historical world is not the world of history. It's not enough to commemorate, it's not enough to light a candle or put a stone or say a prayer. The story from 70 years ago should make us all feel uncomfortable, because this is not a closed chapter. Those ideologies of hatred still exist. People still hate each other from different reasons. And Auschwitz, or when we talk more universally, genocides never start with the killing. It always starts with ideology. It always starts with people get poisoned with this ideology. And there is a long time where people can do something before it becomes too late, before people start murdering others for hatred. But in most cases, we are bystanders and we see that this is not our problem. And when it starts being dangerous, it's in most cases are too late. So this is something which is part of our educational strategy also today, to go outside of the historical box, to make people feel this discomfort. And this is what I try to say today during this presentation. I think we have few moments for questions, if you have any questions at all. If not, there is still this, when I look at the program sheet when I came here, for the first time I participate in a conference when you have such a choice. Unfortunately, my poor Italian just limits my possibility of participating in many things, but anyway, it was really a privilege to get this invitation to be able to tell something about our mission today. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. And I think...
I have the question regarding the photo on Instagram when the teens, they're walking on the rails. Do you think that the teens with probably the school trips, they come with the wrong perception of the place because do they treat it like the problem is just in the past and they don't think that the Holocaust can be still a present problem?
So this will again be very complicated, because when I show these pictures, I show just some little elements. I mean, I will say that among 2.1 million people visiting the memorial, most of them are behaving okay. Most of them do not do anything that is problematic or disrespectful, but it seems that there is a problem of preparation, of why people come, what is the place that they visit, and we need to address this. I mean, for us, especially when they're individual visitors, it's slightly different, but when they come with the groups, we expect the teacher or the educator to tell them something so that they would be aware. And for example, with the selfie, I'm more careful, because selfie is a language, visual language of today. I mean, we all do it from time to time, and this is how we communicate with the world. So with a picture, I always try to also look at the motivation. I mean, why a person decided to take, for example, a selfie or another photograph. And sometimes those people have this very deep thoughts, and it's very emotional for them, and the only way they can express themselves is to take a selfie, because this is the language, visual language that they know and understand, and they want to share it with others. With the case of people balancing on the rail line, I do not buy this, that this is something, this is for me disrespectful. And still, very few people will do something like this, but because we see it, we can address it as a more universal issue. I mean, when you come to places like that, think about what's your role there and respect the story of this place, even if you don't feel that this is relevant to you. And so this is part of the education we can have with the global audience. And something that was interesting, I mean, of course, this is not based on any proper data search, but because I see all those photographs in, yeah, so that's my alarm clock, yeah. Because I look at those pictures, it seems that I see less of this. So maybe for those, maybe this kind of discussion that it triggered, the articles that it triggered, have this unique educational value that people start doing it, but from time to time it will be happening. But if we said we are not supposed to deal with this, we're not supposed to address this because it's just a little scale, I think it's still our obligation to talk about this.
As you said, this is the first time you are stepping outside of your place, right? This is the first time you are taking a presentation. And I would like to ask you if this could be the first time to start this kind of education in other places as well, going to schools maybe, because it is a very actual theme now, hating people and what is going on around the world.
So, of course, this is the first time I am at such a conference. I talk about this to historians, teachers. I sometimes am invited to different places. But I think this is why we decided to be in social media. We also decided to start the e-learning programs. We have many online lessons. We have a virtual tour. We work with Google, and there's the Google Cultural Institute, and we also have exhibitions there. But precisely because we know that there are people who will never be able to come to the memorial, who will never be able to listen to our lesson, and who are interested in it, and who are engaged, and for whom this is important. So this is why we invest in a certain way, more and more work to be present online, because that was something that triggered our presence on Facebook. We saw that people search for information about Auschwitz on Facebook, that they set up pages about Auschwitz, and sometimes they could get, they could reach Holocaust deniers, or they could simply, sometimes those pages were not so good. So we decided that the institution as the source should be there, and for us it was this little experiment that we started at the very beginning. But today, this seems to be, I mean, people accepted us there, and that's one important thing. And we can see that we can use this to make a difference. Because sometimes, I mean, today when I see the power, when we started our Twitter, we had 100 followers, 1,000 followers. And then we said, is it really worth, continuing doing that? But today, with the verified account and the large number of people who can share our message, it becomes an important tool for us to talk with the world outside and to trigger this discussion in the world outside. But of course we travel, we go to conferences, we are invited to different educational things, so we talk about it more and more to address the responsibility of today. That this is something that a few years ago we were very careful, that we said Auschwitz should be this historical place where we deal with history, and maybe people will not understand this. But with the changes of the world today, with this difficult world that we can see those ideologies present, and especially the silence of the world. For example, when you see what happened in Burma, the world was silent. I mean, the institutions that were supposed to talk about this were silent, basically. And this started thinking that maybe we're doing something wrong. Maybe our voice should be more pushed to these challenges of responsibility. And again, we're trying to give a universal message. And this is very interesting with some tweets that we sent with some very basic things like Auschwitz didn't start with gas chambers. We have people asking us, are you talking about this event or that event or that event? Which means they process this universal question that we ask through their own contexts, and they find something in their context. And if I don't think we can save the world, but if we will get to an individual and trigger some change, this will already be an educational success. Because Auschwitz Memorial is still an institution that has a certain mandate of what is the story that we are talking about.
No, say proprio, it is really short question, and I ask you
Yeah.
just to have a really short
Yes.
answer.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very... Okay. How do you spot fake news? I mean, you just happen to bump into them or someone tells them to you? How does it happen? Because there are so many news and so many fake news.
So Twitter allows you to search, and for example, we search the word Auschwitz and the Holocaust. We have limited searches for verified accounts. So this is one thing we do, but more and more people simply tag us or tag Auschwitz Memorial and ask us for a response because they know that we do it. So yes, so people. This is the social part of the social media. People help us, and we can see it more and more. And people expect us because they see it works. They see that sometimes we take the stand and we can help. So every day, you know, I get up, I turn on my phone, I say Auschwitz. What happened over the night? But then people also help us. Yes.
Pawel, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.